Okay, hello. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Workflows webinar. We've got plenty of people joining us today from all over the world. Current count is around 63 people, but there were around 200 who signed up, so we're expecting plenty more. We've got some people joining from over in Germany, some Swiss people, some people from Israel, I saw even on the list, and plenty of people from the United States of America. If you are one of those, I just want to say good morning to you. My name is Ruth Wood, and I am leading product marketing at Beekeeper. And with me today is Omar Molling. He is our product management lead, so my counterpart over in the product team. Omar, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Hi, everyone. My name is Omar. I'm a product lead at Beekeeper, and I had the pleasure to work with our teams to create workflows, and we are very excited to show it to you today.
Sweet. So today we're going to learn more about workflows. This is the latest development from Beekeeper, which is going to help you make your business processes faster, smarter, and easier. If you're already a Beekeeper customer, which I think most of you are, Workflows is really the next level in flexibility for your platform. So it unlocks much greater cost efficiency and even revenue for your business. And we'll give you some examples of how that might work a little later in the session. Workflows is no longer about content in Beekeeper. So it means that Beekeeper is no longer purely a content platform for frontline, but it also unlocks plenty of processes. So with Workflows process automation technology, our customers will be able to pull together any combination of components in Beekeeper and create an infinite amount of business processes to suit their needs. Now, this webinar today is basically the launch of our open beta for Workflows. What does that mean? It means that we have been testing the feature for quite a while with a few dedicated customers. We are really happy with how it's going. We are set to launch fully to everybody in Q1 next year. And before we do that, we're looking for some people to get early access to the feature, to this new technology, so that you can test it out and start benefiting from Workflows technology before the end of the year. Let's move on to the next slide. We've already gone over this a little bit. So hi, I'm Ruth. I am mainly occupied with bringing our new product developments and features to market at Beekeeper. So any announcements you get in that space, that comes from me and my team. I close the loop between our lovely customer success managers, our product teams, sales and marketing to ensure that we're in touch with our market and our users and basically share the Beekeeper love far and wide. Omar, what do you do?
Yeah, I work in product management. What we do there is that we on one hand we maintain our product, but on the other hand we evolve our product to meet our customers' needs. And specifically on workflows, we have been working on this for quite some months with some of those dedicated customers. And we want to open this up. We want more customers to have access to this. As you mentioned, early access to this. We are planning to launch this in Q1. And I'm very happy to present this today. Hopefully then many of our customers and prospects will give this a try and share their feedback with us.
Fantastic. So what are we going to talk about today? This is today's agenda. Item number 1 is what are workflows anyway? So this is kind of helping you spot workflows in the wild. And once you can spot a potential workflow, then you can start figuring out how to map it into Beekeeper to make that process smoother and easier for you and your organization. We're going to look at what's possible right now with Beekeeper workflows. And then we're going to go into 4 examples of workflows in practice. So these will be shift availability, finding people to fill open shifts, sometimes at short notice, PTO requests, so time off requests, help desk emails or any other kind of ticketing, and record keeping for HR compliance purposes. Then we move into the future of workflows, what to expect in the next few months, because Omar and the team will continue to develop this technology over the next few months as one of our top priorities. And then I'll tell you what to do to get early access to the technology in Beekeeper. So what are workflows? You can understand a workflow as basically any business process, usually with more of an administrative element. You need something that kicks it off, as with any process, And then you need a set of steps, any number of steps that can happen that bring it to completion and achieve the desired result of that process. That sounded a little bit technical. So before we get too technical, let's just join Omar for a coffee. Now, this is Omar's coffee process. Omar's wife says, "Hey, honey, I'd like a coffee." And because Omar is such a great guy, he always says, "Yeah, okay, honey, sure, I'll make you a coffee." Then the next step is checking if there is enough coffee to fulfill the request. If there is enough coffee, then that's a go. Omar makes a coffee for his wife and he brings the coffee to her. That's a completed process. Omar, how many times a day does this happen? Does this happen often?
So let's say this is a very much a real world example of a process, and I can confirm this happens probably at least once a day. This is a recurring process that happens all the time.
Does it happen often in the mornings?
Typically, we focus our coffee consumption from the morning to like mid-afternoon. I think that is where this process would apply mostly. Then it would switch over into other types of drinks later on the day.
Very nice. Good to know. So the way that we would see this process in Beekeeper at a very basic level is you've got a trigger, an initial event that kicks this off. And then after this, you've got any number of actions that can go in different directions and involve different parts of the platform or different parts of your business. So Omar's coffee qualifies as a workflow. And when we start to think about workflows like this, we start to see that workflows are really everywhere. They exist at every level of every business. Maybe they're already formalized as some sort of process, and maybe they're not, but they could be, and it would make someone's job a lot easier. So once you start spotting these potential workflows of triggers and actions in your organization, it's really fun to get creative and see how to map them with Beekeeper. So for example, I heard a story the other week about an assembly line in a manufacturing plant. Now, there were these engineers in a different office that were designing the product that was being assembled. And they didn't often sense check their designs with the assembly teams. That meant that when the product actually got to production and got onto the assembly line, that miscommunication, so not checking beforehand how easy it was to assemble, that resulted in a number of inefficiencies. And it ended up costing the company about 1% of COGS, cost of goods sold, every year. Now, how great would it be if they could set up a new process that closes that loop? You know, every time a new design is finalized by the engineers, SAP pings a testing team via Beekeeper who can test it out on the line. That's the kind of efficiency that you can unlock with workflows. The way you spot these in your business is any process that involves queuing, like physically standing in line for something, waiting, double checking, approving, getting a second opinion on something. Or in many cases, if you're an existing customer, it will be forms you've already set up in Beekeeper and what needs to happen after those are submitted. This is all a perfect opportunity for a workflow. So now let's get into what workflows can look like in Beekeeper. What can you actually do? And here I'm going to hand over to Omar.
Thank you, Ruth. So how does all of this look like on workflows? And I would like to start with this. It's all about flexibility. We have built a very flexible tool for administrators to model their very custom business processes directly onto Beekeeper. And in fact, with workflows, we are gluing together the entire Beekeeper platform. Bringing with this also the next level of efficiency in creating flows of actions to model any of those processes using all of the components that are available on Beekeeper today, being chats, forums, tasks, and all the rest of it. And flexibility is key to us here because we are very much aware that every company customizes their processes, at least to some extent. So even though every company will have a paid time off request process, each company will have some custom steps on within that process, which those steps very much will depend on the teams that they have in place, their organizational structures, and also at the end on the tools that they have in place. One other part here is also that workflows taps very much into one of our core values at Beekeeper, which is to keep it simple. And this capability has been built from the startup with a fully visual interface that we hope will enable customers to add and manage those workflows on Beekeeper using the visual interface where no code is required, no programming skills are required. So it doesn't need a technician to build up those workflows there. And we believe this brings a huge amount of flexibility to administrators that can take these processes, bring them onto Beekeeper, and also go ahead and evolve those processes, adapt them when they change right away on Beekeeper itself. So with that, let's go into what are the capabilities that we have available right now from the start of this open beta. Starting with the triggers, the example of you, Ruth, about my wife asking for a coffee. Again, very much a real world example of a process. Starting today, we have two categories of triggers. One is to listen into those forms that we have on Beekeeper. And this is a very powerful trigger to listen into all of those processes that require some sort of action taken by the employee. So basically all processes that run ad hoc when an employee has a need for that process to run, forms is a perfect feature for that. So think about a PTO request form, but also another request to get equipment, or when you need to gather COVID test results to make sure that your work environment is both safe but also compliant. The second category of triggers that we have is all about time recurrence. So we have added a variety of triggers that can work from highly frequent processes that need to happen every day, also multiple times a day, through weekly all the way to monthly processes. And some of the examples that we heard a lot here are to, for example, to gather the shift availability for the next week. This is one that would typically run on a weekly basis, or to run recurring checks for the equipment, the machines that are in place that could happen on any frequency throughout the month, or many of the other requests like store opening checklists, cleaning checklists, and performance reviews that would typically happen perhaps every month. And then if we go to the actions that we have today, so this is, again, after the trigger has kicked off, we can have one or more actions that can happen one after each other. And we have a variety of actions already here today. The rest will all follow up as we want to connect all of Beekeeper onto this. The first one being that Forms is such a powerful feature for us to collect this structured data to kick off a process. But some customers also asked us, we still need a file format that we can easily share and exchange. And PDF is definitely the winner there. So we have created an action that can transform any form submission on Beekeeper, regardless of how many questions there are, if there are images or not. We will package all of that in one PDF file. And that file can be shared on Beekeeper, but also, for example, via email to an external email inbox. More to that later. Second action we have is that you can create a post on a stream. And this works really well for processes where you want some follow-up within Beekeeper. The example being you want a PTO request that needs to be checked by the entire HR team. So you could very well have a stream accessible by the HR team. You post something onto this stream, and then the HR team can use the comments function on the post to work through that request and understand how to follow up. Third one is about sending an email, optionally with attachments as well. And this works really well to reach third parties, both third-party teams or companies, as well as systems. So there is a variety of systems that can very well work with emails that come in and process them in an automated way. We have a few examples later on as well. Fourth one is to create a campaign and send it to a group. This works really well when the process involves reaching out to a larger group of employees, where chats is, for example, not perhaps the ideal way to do that, but a campaign is very well made to reach out to a group of employees. If the group is not there yet, you can just go ahead and create that group, and then you can target the campaign to go exactly to that group. The campaign itself can include any custom content, for example, a link to a form to gather the shift availability for the next week, or for example, to have the group of employees sign up to the next cool company event that you are planning. Fifth one is about sending a chat message. That is the perfect tool to reach out to individual employees. So whenever your process includes steps to let an employee know about something, notify an employee about something that came up, or also just reminding the employee about something, chats is definitely the right feature to use. And the last one on this list is to create a task. This is also one of our features, and you can create a task, or optionally, you can also wait for the task to complete before you continue. And this works really well for processes that involve a little more structure in the tasks, in the to-dos that someone needs to pick up. So this works well, for example, for lightweight approval processes where you want to create and assign a task to someone to follow up with, and that comes up in a very prominent way on Beekeeper.
Sweet. That is very exciting, Omar. And I'm aware that that was a lot of information. So what we're going to do next is go into some real life examples of what this stuff can look like in practice. So we're going to meet Lara now. Lara is an F&B food and beverage team leader in a large hotel. And she needs to ensure adequate staffing in advance for busy weeks. So she knows you've got like a conference coming up in that hotel, needs to make sure that her team is fully staffed for that event. However, she has a problem, which is the current paid time off process is happening on paper. People fill out these forms. The forms are collected by head office. They come to Lara. Lara has to process all of these manually. And she has a really hard time doing that. The result of that is that Lara and her team get pretty frustrated because Lara spends about 2 hours every week processing these requests. Her team, who submit the requests, never really know the status of those requests. They have to wait a long time to get an approval. Even when people submit those requests really well in advance, it takes way too long to approve the request, and so Lara can plan for the absence for these busy weeks. And then unplanned PTO that needs to be taken at very short notice causes real problems with staffing because the request just can't be processed fast enough. Now, in Lara's case, we have a live demo of how that workflow would look that Omar prepared earlier. So let's just have a look at that.
In this demo, we want to show how Lara would go ahead and create the PTO request workflow on Beekeeper. So Lara is a team leader in the large hotel, and she would be using Beekeeper as well on her desktop computer. And this would be the first screen she would see when entering Beekeeper. Lara would then go ahead on the top right and go straight into the dashboard. Here, she finds workflows in the toolbox section. As of right now, there is no workflow there yet. So Lara goes ahead and creates a new workflow. This is the screen that pops up. We said this is the PTO request process for which a form is the right tool to use. The PTO request form has already been prepared. So Lara can go ahead and select the trigger that will kick off this process. Of course, in this case, it will be a form submission. So we select this forms trigger. We click on the trigger itself so that we can configure it. And in this case, on the right-hand side, the steps in the process can be configured. There's a drop-down box which shows up all of the forms that are available on the tenant. And Lara can go ahead and easily select the PTO form for this workflow. So now the next step we said that would work here would be to send a chat message to the employee who requested the paid time off. So we want to let the employee know that the request has been received. For this one, we will add the first action, which will be to send a chat message, as that's the perfect feature to reach an individual user. We select the action, add it to the workflow, and then we can configure it. In this case, we want to reach back to the user who submitted the form. So we can configure this, and as I click the select configuration on the right-hand side, I have the magic variables popping up on the left. Those are basically all of the pieces of data that the workflow makes available for me. And that section will also fill up with all pieces of data that become available as you add steps to the workflow. In this case, of course, we have only the form trigger so far. So we will go ahead and select the ID of the form submitter. So the employee who submitted that form should also get the chat message back. We will say, we received your request and will process it shortly. In this case, no attachment is needed. So we could save this workflow with a successful say we know the configuration is fine, but we want actually Lara to get to know about this request immediately so that she can follow up with it as soon as possible. So we want to add another action, and in this case, it will be a task for Lara to follow up on that. But also we want afterwards to let the employee know that the process has been, that the request has been processed. So we will create a task and wait for the task to be completed. So here's a task action, and we can add a title. We will say that there's a new PTO request, and we will instruct Lara to please review the request and follow up. So to whom do we want to assign this? Of course, in this case, to Lara. The user selector dropdown will follow up very soon. So for this demo, I will just go to Lara's profile and copy her user ID of Beekeeper so that I can paste it in the configuration here. And then after this task has been checked off, I want to go back to the employee and send a chat message. So I can tap back into the ID of the form submitter from the very first trigger. And I can say your request has been processed. Also here, no attachment in this case. So I can go ahead, save. It saves correctly. That means everything seems to be fine. And the last step is whenever Lara feels ready to use this process, then Lara can go ahead and activate the workflow. And now the workflow will be there and will kick off whenever the PTO request form has been, will be submitted by someone in her team. So let's go ahead and try this out. So the workflow is now active, and I have my test user on this tenant on the left-hand side on the screen. I have the PTO request form open here. And on the right-hand side, I have Lara logged in using, in this case, the mobile app of Beekeeper. She also has that app available on her mobile phone all the time when she is going around in the business. So let's see, there's currently no tasks for Lara, 0 of 0. I will go ahead and fill out the PTO request. This will be a PTO. I will be out from tomorrow to Thursday. No additional insights here, so we'll just submit this. And this is done. And now I already see that I got a chat message. I know that, yeah, we received your request and we'll process it shortly. Fair enough. So now I can switch to Lara's screen. And in this case, here it is. So 0 of 1 completed. I have a new task here. Lara can go in, see what the task is. There is a new PTO request. Please review the request and follow up. So let's assume Lara does this. Everything is fine. So Lara can check off the task. And now on the left-hand side, I saw that immediately I got the chat message saying your request has been processed. And this is how, in essence, the workflows will be able to implement your processes on Beekeeper.
Okay, amazing. Very exciting demo. I see here that we've got some questions coming through in the Q&A. I'll take a moment to publish those in a second. We will have some time at the end of the session to answer these. As we saw there, that's a huge efficiency boost for Lara. She has no need to scan or copy or physically move any forms around. She gets much better oversight of who is available when, so that she can cover those busy periods well in advance. Let's move on to our next example. Now, this is Lee. Lee is the HR leader for Lara's hotel group, and he is really concerned with compliance. And we know that record keeping for compliance is a really big issue for HR managers. He gets frustrated because frontline record retention involves scanning a lot of documents manually, and compliance is really important, but no one seems to care about the effort that it takes. So he feels like record keeping can carry huge risks if it's done wrong, and he feels like it's a real thankless task when it's done right. Now, I don't know if there's any HR leaders on this call who can identify with that, but we've heard from a few. Now, under some national employment laws, it's necessary to store a record of many different types of requests an employee makes during their employment lifecycle and keep those records for up to 9 years. So Omar, what would Lee's workflow look like that would help him out here?
Yeah, so this is one example. Again, this is all about flexibility to be able to model your processes onto workflows. But in this example, what would work really well for Lee would be to have a form or to tap into those forms, the PTO request form, for example, and whenever someone fills that out, convert that form into a PDF that is a very exchangeable file format. Use the email sending step, attach that PDF to the email, can be sent to a very specific email address. And with that, pass it over to the compliance tool. And in this case, the email can be fully customized. So you can actually shape the subject line of the email, the main text of the email, to include any specific information that third-party tool might require for the tool to automatically process that email, or if there is another team taking care of the request, to pass on the necessary information for that team to process the email and the PDF.
Sounds great. Cool. So let's move on to our next example. This is Lauren. Lauren is a shift manager at a busy cafe. She needs to gather availability for next week's shifts every Wednesday. Her problem is that she manages her team right now largely via WhatsApp. So what she does is she sends a message into a group chat. She's like, hey, who's available for shifts next week? Lauren and her team get really frustrated with this process because she's often got a really reactive approach to scheduling. Because everything's just going down in this group chat all the time. She can't keep track of the responses, and she has no central oversight of who is available when. Her team, on the other hand, are often they're unaware of weekly overtime opportunities, so they don't know whether they could maybe pick up a few more hours next week because they hear about it too late. So how can we help Lauren out? Omar, any ideas?
Absolutely. So we can help her out as she can go ahead and create that workflow by herself on the dashboard. And this one would be a typical one where this needs just to happen every week, every Wednesday, regardless of anything else that is happening. So the weekly trigger would be perfect for that. And in this case, she wants to reach out to the entire team. So it would be perfect to have that team within a Beekeeper group. And then she can reach out to that group using a campaign on Beekeeper. She can attach to that campaign all of the necessary information she wants to transmit to the team, and then also, for example, the form where she wants to get back who will be available to do what. But also in this case, as she has so many things on her plate, she wants actually to remind herself every week to go ahead and also process this information so that she does not forget about it and does it maybe last minute, which might be very stressful. So she can create at the end of this workflow a step that will create a task for herself to actually then follow up and review the data and prepare the next shifts. And that task will stay there until she has ticked it off, so she will not easily forget about it. And I think we will help her greatly with this process.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, fun fact, this example is already live with one of our Beekeeper customers. We've been working with them to fill open shifts at short notice, and they use a workflow that's really similar to this one. So before, their shift planning was similar to Lauren's. It was more reactive. It was more like firefighting and trying to fill key positions on the floor to ensure that their manufacturing plant could run at maximum efficiency. Typically, that involves a shift manager texting or calling around, trying to reach people at short notice. And if that didn't work, they'd organize these ad hoc double shifts for employees, which can have a really bad impact on employees' well-being and make them more vulnerable to health and safety mishaps. But now with this workflows technology from Beekeeper, they're actually reaching around 1,400 employees every week with a campaign and a form to gather that availability. As a result, they're filling those open shifts for key positions, and their frontline teams have much better visibility on safe overtime opportunities where they don't have to work double shifts, which is a great win-win. Our last example is Lenny. Lenny's a super happy guy. Look at this. He's a maintenance supervisor in a manufacturing plant. He currently triages tickets for his team in a ticketing system. So he gets emails from the shop floor, and he then, those get forwarded based on the email subject line into a ticketing system where he processes them. He gets frustrated, poor Lenny, because the maintenance requests take a little while to reach him because not everyone has an email address. So they can only be submitted by other supervisors. People who actually work on the machines get no feedback on the status of their requests. And that means that when his team is out and about, lots of people are trying to flag them down to ask about open maintenance tasks or things that need doing. And that's really disruptive for them because they're fulfilling other work orders. So how would Lenny's workflow look, Omar?
Yeah, so for Lenny, again, forms would be a perfect tool to get started. So like someone will fill out a request for that. Form is great to collect the data in. So form trigger in this case. And then as he is using a ticketing system, specialized ticketing system, in this example, as many ticketing systems support the functionality of creating such tickets in an automated way, by sending an email to a specific email address, we would leverage all of those actions where Lenny could have the form transform into PDF so that it can be shared very easily and retrieved, stored everywhere around. And then this gets sent via email to that ticketing system with all of the right subject lines and all of the right pieces of information in the main text of the email so that the ticketing system can process this in an automated way, create a ticket, and hopefully assign it to the right people to follow up. And all of that can be done in an automated way. And also, in this case, we can have Lenny send back a chat message to whoever raised that maintenance request to ensure that, yes, the maintenance team received this and we will take care of this request and we'll follow up whenever that is done. And for that, sending a chat message to that requester would be the last step in our example here.
Awesome. Actually, I spoke to one of our customers recently who mentioned this case as the #1 reason he was excited about workflows. So he works in IT for a smaller company that has very little in place regarding IT tickets from office workers and even less for frontline workers, which is no surprise. So whenever someone needed access rights to a tool or had an IT issue, they'd kind of try to call him or turn up at his office. And that meant that, he was the only IT manager and he couldn't always be there. So that was a big pain for him. And the same's true for HR and any other essential desk-based teams that keep the business running. So with that workflow, he would be able, sorry, Omar.
Yeah. No, what I wanted to add is, by using workflows and gluing all of these steps together, we have seen with customers that we can simplify to such a big extent the time that the way and the time they need to invest in those processes by also just connecting the pieces together, automating some steps out of it. And this creates huge savings in terms of time and also costs involved. So it doesn't need to be a huge process there, or also just like 4 or 5 steps that are automated in the right way can really ease the daily work of so many frontline managers.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, in this case, you can essentially extend your office hours, right? So you can, people can still submit tickets if they're working on weekends and you're not. And then you can keep a central oversight of that and forward that to whatever tool you want to process them in. So I just want to say, Phil, if you're on this call, this is for you, buddy. Now let's quickly move on to the future of workflows. What to expect early next year? Well, new triggers, new actions, and new possibilities. The new triggers will be based on various things. So users first login, which is useful for onboarding process. The date in a user profile, for example, birthdays or work anniversaries. I know a lot of you are probably using Zapier for this right now. This means that you can move away from that and do that directly in Beekeeper. Starting and ending shifts, which is useful for checklists or handovers or reporting or anything that isn't necessarily time-based, but is like more relevant to a particular team. Then new actions, we'll be building in more advanced workflows for approvals, sort of multi-step approvals and approvals that need to be answered by multiple parties, because we know it's not always one supervisor answering every request. You'd be able to create an open task for anyone in the team to pick up, which is useful to say, okay, you've got an open task that is like, can anyone pick up the early shift on Tuesday next week? Somebody picks it up, and then that is logged, and that's that process done. That's a matter of seconds. New possibilities that we're going to unlock is multi-step and branching approvals. So if this, then this, or these two things should happen simultaneously. Now, this is really useful for more complex workflows around PTO and expenses and accidents, anything that needs to go to someone, then go to someone else, or like stop at a particular point and be approved. And then also exciting third-party triggers and actions. So for example, if a shipment arrives and then you need to review the inventory, or if a PTO request is approved and you need to update the vacation balance in a separate system, and then send a message to the user in Beekeeper, we're unlocking that kind of use case as well. So everyone will get access to workflows in the new year. It's not going to be restricted by package. If you're on the more basic package in Beekeeper, don't worry, you will be able to, if you are interested in starting testing workflows before the end of the year, then you can totally do that. We're not restricting this to the higher plans at all. You'll be restricted more in terms of the number of workflows that you can set up. So if you want to try out 1 or 2 now, go for it. Basically, next year we'll be unlocking the flexibility to do much more with this. So for those of you who are using Zapier, think about replacing that with Beekeeper workflows. And we can also start thinking about more engagement-driven workflows, sort of drip campaigns and onboarding processes and stuff like that. So really exciting. Yeah, excited? We are too. It's such a pleasure to be here and present this to you. We've been working on it for so many months, and it's really nice to be able to talk about it openly. So what can you do next? You can register to get early access to workflows. We're going to paste a link in the chat. Omar, do you have it available right now? If not, you can always find it in the handouts. If you navigate to handouts, there is a link to register interest for early access. You can open that up, fill out a short form, and we will be in touch with you with what to do next. And one last thing from us is we would love your feedback on this session and also on workflows more generally. We've made a quick survey. It's also available in handouts. If you navigate there and click on Workflows Survey, then you can access it there. Or if you want to scan a QR code, then you can do it directly on your screen right now. We'd really appreciate your feedback. With that, we have a few minutes left, about 3 minutes left. Probably should have planned this for longer. We've got a few questions in the Q&A. We've answered a couple of them already. So will workflows be part of the forms package? No, workflows is a separate thing that will be available under all plans. And how would it work if an organization has multiple supervisors that approve PTO? That kind of more complex workflow, we know it exists. We've done our research here. That will be enabled with multi-step approvals in the next few months. Omar, is that correct?
That is correct, but I would also encourage you to sign up on the beta and reach out to your customer success manager. Get in touch with us. We would be very keen to get in touch with you and work on those processes and see also how to evolve workflows to support your processes even better.
Fantastic. Another one, will the worker bee feature be continued with the upcoming edition of workflows? Really smart question. We'll be able to provide more information on the future of the worker bee feature within the next few weeks, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But what I can say is in the next 2 to 3 months, we will be launching more triggers and actions within workflows that are, it will achieve parity with worker bees. So if you have any existing automations running in Beekeeper on worker bees, you'll be able to do exactly the same thing with workflows and much more. So I'd encourage you to sign up, start using it, and start transferring those things over. We've got some new questions in Q&A, which I haven't published yet. Give me just a second to read these. Okay, so there's one, who can get access to workflows? Is it only global admins or could group admins also get access? Omar?
Yeah, a very good question. In the open beta, it will be global admins only for now. This is due to the security that we have in our platform in the core of it, but we are already planning to open up workflows also to other roles on Beekeeper, and this is something we plan to release at some point throughout Q1. So this will come as well.
Perfect. Amazing. We've got 1 more minute left. I don't think we've got much more time for any further questions, but we do have plenty. We'll find a way of answering these more publicly, potentially with a link in the next Beekeeper post with some answers. So you can check that and we'll make it happen. Next steps, Please, if you're interested in testing this out, go to handouts, click register interest for early access and fill out that form, and we'll be in touch with the next steps. I just want to thank you for your time attending this. It is a great pleasure to be able to present it. We are super, super excited about this development at Beekeeper. We think it's going to unlock so much goodness for you as our customers. And we can't wait to see all of the different creative ways in which you set up workflows for your organization. So thank you very, very much once again. It's getting very dark here. I should move inside. And have a lovely evening if you are based in Europe. Have a lovely morning if you are based in the US. And I will speak to you all very soon.
Thank you everyone for attending, and please join the beta, sign up, try out the feature, and let us know what you think.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.